Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
You know, I haven't even really seen too much of it. I fell asleep in the third quarter. So, I haven't seen too much of that. We'll look at those all next week.
Oh, that was Nick Sirianni's reaction when he was asked about Dan Campbell's decisions last night. He said, well, I fell asleep last night. Third quarter of the game, Sirianni out like a light, sawing logs as Dan Campbell is going for it on fourth down on his own 30-yard line. ESPN's Sal Pal, national correspondent, is with us. Sal Pal, are you still awake in the third quarter of that game last night?
Definitely not. I was Gonzville. I was out like a light.
You and Sirianni sawing logs, huh?
You know, it's such a funny thing, right? It's funny on so many levels. First of all, it shows that, you know, Nick Sirianni's normal. Like all of us, those games are late, and he can watch the film and the cut-ups that are provided by his staff the next day if he wants to. It shows that Nick Sirianni is focused on the Carolina Panthers. It shows that Nick Sirianni is honest. Now, he could have got up in that press conference and said, I stayed up for all four quarters. I was so impressed. You know, that's a team we're going to see down the road. But no, I fell asleep. I actually just loved it. I loved the comment. I loved everything about it.
Wait, so you don't think by the time he got to the press conference he hadn't seen or heard or had any inclination that they went for it wildly last night?
Yeah, well, of course there is that. But, you know, he said he fell asleep, and I believe that he fell asleep. If he said he fell asleep, I fell asleep for sure.
Yeah, I was hanging in there. I was holding on for dear life. I was kicking and screaming, but I did make it, and I'm thinking, holy mackerel, this is wild. And the Lions pretty much, I guess, seal, for the most part, the number one seed in the NFC. Is that the feeling over the last 4 weeks here that they're going to be tough to catch?
Yeah, well, when you look at it, I mean, the Eagles still have opportunities to catch them. The Lions still have a couple of teams they have to play that are difficult. But they're so good at home at scoring points. You know, they score 34 points a game at home. Actually, they've had 11 indoor games. If you want to count that game down in Houston where the roof was open, that's not exactly outdoor elements. The one game they had outdoors was at Lambeau. They scored only 24 points, but they wound up winning the game. You know, the thing is, I thought Nick Sirianni had a shot at being coach of the year, but after that performance on national TV last night, I think Dan Campbell definitely sealed the coach of the year honors. But, you know, the Eagles are probably going to get MVP for Saquon Barkley, defensive player of the year for Zach Bond, and defensive rookie of the year for Quinyon Mitchell.
Well, this would be an interesting matchup, Sal. You just mentioned a lot of possible hardware, but Campbell and Sirianni, you know, the changing of the way the head coaches in the NFL, kind of a gambler mentality. And these two teams right now, they're at the top of their profession, those two guys. And a lot of people criticize the way that they make these decisions, but you got a good possibility that these might be the two best teams probably in the whole league right now, and that's the way they operate, with aggression.
Yeah, I like the aggressiveness. Always have aggressiveness with wisdom. As we have examined, you and I, on your show, when Dan Campbell went for it last year against the 49ers and blew it. You know, you got to be smart about it. It helps to be at home. It helps to be in that situation where you're at home and you're playing lights out on offense. And they got no pressure. The Packers got no pressure last night. Two things. One, it's in Detroit, and that offensive line of the Lions is as good as the Eagles. And two, he gets the ball out of his hands so quickly, Jared Goff. It's a really good 1-2 punch. Jared Goff, in my opinion, is going to give Saquon Barkley all he can handle for MVP.
Yeah, you look at that Lions offense last night, and you look at, you know, the matchup with that Eagles defense. That would be a lot of fun if those two teams get going. But I want to play a bite from your friend Bart Scott, who says he thinks the Eagles are a little too dependent on Saquon Barkley. This is what he said this morning.
Talk about a guy that's on pace to carry the ball 396 times. The most he's ever carried the ball is 246. So can he stay healthy, and can you be too dependent on Saquon Barkley? What I love about the Lions, what I love about Green Bay is that anybody can get you. You don't go in there with Green Bay like, who am I going to stop? The defense dictates where the ball goes.
Does he have a point there, your friend Bart Scott?
Well, I've been saying all year long that they have to be judicious with Saquon Barkley, but now he's in position to get the all-time rushing record and break Eric Dickerson's record.
Yes.
Now, we can examine that.
By the way, Sal Pal, a young Mike Gill's favorite running back growing up, number 29, Eric Dickerson.
Yeah, I love his style of running, too. He exploded right through the hole, ran upright, had great getaway speed like Saquon Barkley, had long legs, very difficult to bring down. He had that neck brace, if you remember.
Yeah, it was like a gazelle.
Yeah, he did. He looked like a runaway gazelle, is exactly correct. And, there's an examination, obviously, of the record, right? Eric Dickerson set the record in 1984. It was not a 17-game schedule. It was a 14-game schedule. So there's a big difference between the two. Is it really breaking the record if you're doing it in 3+ games more than Eric Dickerson? Is it worth putting Saquon Barkley out there when you have it locked up and you have a chance to maybe win 2 games, only have to win 1 on the road and get to a Super Bowl? There is a risk reward. There is a team and individual award conversation that's got to happen. Now, if you remember, Sirianni had a chance to put Saquon Barkley back into a game, and Barkley is against the Giants, if you remember.
Yep, versus Giants, yep.
Yep, and Barkley said, no, let the young guys eat. I'll stay on the bench. So Barkley, the attitude, the personality, the approach of team first. And I think when it comes down to it, that's the way that will roll.
Sal Palantonio is with us, ESPN's national correspondent. The Eagles taking on the Panthers this week. And, you mentioned his pace. This is the kind of game, Sal, he could chalk up a lot of yards against this Panthers rush defense. This is the kind of game where he didn't get the record against the Giants, but he could get a single-game record against this defense, right?
Yeah, right. The Panthers are 32nd in rush yards per game, giving up. They're 27th in rushing yards average given up. They don't do anything well defensively. They don't. The first downs per game given up, they're 32nd in the league, which tells you, that you can keep them on the field. Their third down efficiency on defense, last in the league. Their points per game differential, last in the league. Their yards per game differential, last in the league, and the Eagles are first in the league in that category, which is a very important category. So they don't do anything well defensively. And, there's one thing about what happened in Baltimore. I went back and I looked at the tape, and this is something that we feature on the NFL Matchup Show in our Eagles-Panthers breakdown tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. on ESPN2. It's a great breakdown with Greg Cosell, myself, and Darius Butler of a pivotal moment against the Ravens in which Jalen Hurts really orchestrated the Eagles' first touchdown. If you remember, the Eagles were down 9-0 in that game. It was the second quarter. It was 3rd and 4 on the Ravens' 40-yard line. And Saquon has a role here, but it's Jalen who orchestrates the pivot point. And they're down 9-0, 3rd and 4 on the Ravens' 40, 10 minutes into the second quarter. Jalen Hurts sees that the Ravens are in a too-high safety role on defense. He calls Barkley's number. Barkley gets the first down. Then Jalen is in no huddle. He goes up to the line of scrimmage and he sees it again, and he calls a quarterback power behind Jordan Mailata, pulling from left to right. Then Jalen Hurts sees that they're in a single high safety. The Ravens switch up their defense, still in no huddle. He throws a slant to A.J. Brown, same defense, and he throws a touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert. On 4 successive plays, 4 different plays, he changed it at the line of scrimmage, in no huddle, and got the Eagles' first touchdown. And I'll tell you, Jalen Hurts is not getting enough credit for his orchestration of the offense in the no huddle. He does it very, very well. He only threw 19 passes, but he's been a very efficient and productive quarterback, especially in no huddle.
I like the breakdown because you're right. On I guess it was Wednesday. He talked so much. I don't know if it was his day after or Wednesday, midweek, or even today. It wasn't today. I know that, but he kind of had to defend Hurts a little bit for being called kind of a game manager, whether that's a negative connotation or not. But the role that Hurts has in this offense and its success, and he's a part of the run game. And why Barkley is successful in the run game?
Yeah. I don't think he's a game manager. I think he's a game orchestrator. He's Tuscanini up behind that line of scrimmage.
I like that one.
I don't want to date, me and you, but we'll go with Leonard Bernstein. How about that? That's better. But he has been a really good quarterback in the no huddle this year, and that was a really good example of it.
I thought the throw he made and the decision to Goddard was a big one to get them back, but just the fluidity in the decision and how quick and where he threw it to get it to Goddard, it kind of got that whole thing capped off perfectly there. They're not going to have Goddard this week, by the way. They will get Smith back, so that should be a nice piece to get back for them. They got this Carolina Panthers team. We talked about their struggles, but the kid on the other side, Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick, he's starting to play better. They gave a scare to the Chiefs 2 weeks ago. They gave a scare to Tampa Bay last week, Sal Pal. Can they come into Philadelphia and give a scare to this Eagles team?
The only thing that they do well is pass protection. So, the Eagles are going to have to be patient defensively, and they've proven that they can be. I think the one thing that you're seeing, and I mentioned Defensive Player of the Year, Zach Vaughn, I interviewed him after the game in Baltimore. And, his ability to just go from sideline to sideline, blitz when he wants to, drop into coverage. He's third in the league in tackles. And then Quinyon Mitchell. The story of Quinyon Mitchell alone would be a monster story if it wasn't on a team with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts
right,
and Jalen Carter. Quinyon Mitchell is the only cornerback in the league, rookie or otherwise, who's played over 450 snaps and not given up a touchdown pass. Think about that, Mike. Think about that. He comes from Toledo, from the MAC conference, and he comes in and becomes the best corner in the league. He leads the Eagles with 10 pass defense.
Yeah.
Ranks second in the league with forced incompletions. And forced incompletion percentage is number 1 in the league, 25%. It's unbelievable. His quarterbacks have a quarterback rating against him of just 70. You know how good that is? And you know how good that is for a rookie corner? It is who's come from Toledo and made the jump to the NFL. To me, he's without it. People talk about Jared Verse, but Jared Verse is on a defense that's okay. Quinyon Mitchell is the most important player on the defense.
And that was my follow-up because you said Bond, Mitchell, DeJean. You've got 3 different players that weren't here last year. All have a huge impact as to why this defense is significantly better than it was a year ago.
Yes, Michael. And I think Quinyon Mitchell's the key. It's like Belichick when he was with the Patriots. Take away the number, make the quarterback hold on to the ball and go to the second and third read, and then let the dogs loose.
Yeah, well, listen, the dogs being loose against Carolina this week, can they get to Bryce Young and put this team down and out early? Don't make it scary towards the end. Got a nice 1 o'clock game up in South Philadelphia. Sal Pal Antonio here on a Sports Bash Friday, getting us ready for the game. And the Eagles have Pittsburgh next week, and then all NFC East the rest of the way to celebrate the Christmas season, and they'll be battling for that number 1 seed. Now, Sal Pal, do you get your reaction when I tell you this? So the Eagles last year, the bottom fell out, and then we're getting ready for 2025. The girlfriend and I decided to book a trip to Thailand in January. I will miss the divisional round and the NFC championship game. Is that acceptable?
Well, Michael, it might be acceptable for a guy who doesn't make a living in sports talk radio and is the number one voice along the Jersey Shore from, Brick Township to Dover, Delaware. It might make sense for that person, but I'm chuckling because we're going to miss you, man. We're going to miss you.
Well, it's funny. Everywhere you go now, we're talking about the number one seed, and they're the best team in the league. And I said, when I booked this back in, August, all I'm thinking is, oh, my God, the bottom of the season, there's no way they're going to make it to the NFC Championship game. Go ahead and book at those dates, and here we are. But I'll see you in New Orleans.
All right, I'll see you. I'll see you on the radio run and row in New Orleans.
I come back on the 29th of January. I'll be home for a couple of days, and then I'll be right out to New Orleans for a couple of days with Sal Pal out there, and hopefully you'll be out there covering the Eagles. That's going to be a fun game if it's Eagles, Lions, Campbell, and Sirianni. The stories of leading into that week. Well, I'll be in Thailand. I won't care.
Oh, I hope you can get to see the game.
Hey, by the way, if I was looking for a place to live over there, do you think Johnny G can hook me up? Has he got any property in Thailand?
Well, Johnny G's got connections everywhere. That Burger Realty in Ocean City, New Jersey. If I'm looking for a house in Harrisburg, I call Johnny G.
I also need to see if he can figure out a way that I can watch the game in Thailand. Can I at least watch the game over there?
Well, I think you probably can do that. They have armed forces radio and television. That's one way. And, there's a certain thing called streaming, these days. So I think it could be okay, brother.
All right. Well, Sal Palantonio on a Sal Pal.
Bring the laptop. Watch matchup on the laptop. I'll send you the links to matchup while you're sunning yourself on the beach in Thailand. Okay,
very
brother?
good. The reality of this is starting to hit me a little bit that I might miss the divisional round and the NFC Championship game. So
you'll be on email. I'll keep those Nick Sirianni press conferences flowing. Just don't fall asleep in the third quarter.
I'll try to keep myself. You were the one. I made it up last night, so give me 2 points for me. Sal Pal, we will catch up for the Eagles and the Steelers next week.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the call with Steve Levy on that game in the booth for ESPN Radio. That's a big one.
Yes, it is. Battle of the Keystone.
They're all big now. They got to win these games, and Detroit. You never know.
And by the way, Minnesota's right there with you. Don't count them out yet.
No, but they're not a problem. They're not a problem. I think it's Detroit. That offense in Detroit.
I agree in terms of the team, but record-wise, Minnesota could cause a little. I mean, they can't do anything to Philly, but they can catch. They play Detroit the last week of the year.
I want to see Dallas Goedert get healthy, Bryce Huff get healthy, Reed Blankenship get healthy. That's what I would like to see.
All right. We'll check that out Sunday, 1 o'clock, Sal Palantonio, ESPN.
I'll talk to you next Friday. We'll try to Eagles Steelers, Mike.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you then. Sal Palantonio, everybody, here on the Sports Bash.